the Mapleview Animal Hospital studios, this is the WHTC Morning News with Gary Stevens and Peg McNichol on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to the WHTC Morning News for this Tuesday, May 26th. Tuesday mornings, we have a chance to chat with U.S. House Representative Fred Upton, who represents Allegan County in the halls of Congress. He is on the other side of our Zoom connection from his base of operations in St. Joe. Fred, good morning, and glad you are with us this morning.
Well, absolutely. Best to you all. Actually, we have votes tomorrow, so I'm going back tonight, and we'll return Thursday.
Tell us a little bit about one of the votes that is expected to be before members of the House, the Paycheck Protection Program. You're one of the co-sponsors of it.
Well, that's right. We had a vote, as part of our Problem Solvers Caucus. Remember, this is the 50-member bipartisan group. We've talked about it a lot. We take a stand if 75% of each side, 75% of the Republicans, 75% of the Democrats are on board, then we bless it, and then we vote, in essence, as a block to make sure that it happens. And we had a vote over the weekend, and we achieved the 75% threshold on both sides. But here's what the deal is. When Congress passed this and the president signed it into law, of course, this was the plan to help provide a lifeline to small businesses if they use 75% of the money over the next 8 weeks for employees, health benefits, etc., that loan would become a grant 8 weeks later. And of course, as we know, a lot of us did want it all to end by Easter. That didn't quite happen. Didn't end by Memorial Day. Didn't quite happen. So now these small businesses that received the loans back, say, the first week of April, and that's when it started, it's now been 8 weeks. And their employees aren't back to work yet. Most states have a stay-at-home order to some degree, as we know. And whether it be a restaurant or a small business, and I did a Zoom call earlier this morning with the South Haven Rotary, a number of small businesses, they're not back up to speed yet, not necessarily their fault, but they can't show that. And so that loan that was going to become a grant all of a sudden stays a loan because, they didn't get to the finish line. So what this bill does is it extends the time from 8 weeks to 16 weeks. The Senate's got a long 16 more weeks. So the Senate's got a little bit of a different version. They actually tried to take it up last week, weren't able to pass it. So we're driving the train, and tomorrow it should pass on a pretty bipartisan vote. I'm intending to speak on the House floor in support of it, make sure that we have the votes to pass it. It's under a little different procedure than normal. And it doesn't have to pass by a majority vote. It has to pass by a 2/3 vote. That should happen based on the past support that we've had for PPP. But this will, in essence, provide that lifeline to small businesses who, because of no fault of their own, things didn't open up, and they'll still be able to qualify for a grant at the end of the day, assuming, of course, that we get it to the president's desk where I know he'll sign it.
As long as there's no, this is not like a Trojan horse situation like we had a couple of weeks ago with the Democratic proposal for the $3.1 billion stimulus, where there were other things inside it that basically torpedoed the entire plan.
That's right. And I would note that there were a number of problem solver Democrats who voted no on that $3 trillion, 1,800-page document.
Fred, a couple of other things I want to touch base with you on. This is something that has come across our wires recently. The U.S. Agriculture and the U.S. Justice Departments are investigating possible fixing or manipulation of beef prices. Beef prices in supermarkets are the highest in decades, but processing companies are paying beef producers staggeringly low prices for cattle. The Justice Department, looking at the nation's 4 biggest meat packers, Tyson Foods, JBS, National Beef, and Cargill, 20 U.S. senators and 11 state attorneys generals have called for federal investigation into market manipulation and unfair practices in the meatpacking industry. I know that agriculture, you've been big in terms of dealing with that. This is something that's hitting consumers as well as the ag industry as well.
Well, it does. And what's troubling is that despite those higher prices for beef, we haven't seen that, or other meat, we haven't seen those passed along to the actual producers, the hog producers, the cattlemen, as far as I know. So I think this is warranted. We need to get to the bottom of it. Obviously, all consumers are impacted by this. And that was a bird flying by my open window. I can't whistle quite that strong. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be something that the FTC and others really take a good look at.
Now, let's go a couple of other topics that I need to discuss with you on. One is dealing with some of the states and how they are trying to get their budgets back in order because of COVID-19. We had the state revenue estimating conference, and some of the people are saying we need help from Washington. Others are saying it's not going to be coming from Washington. Michigan's going to have to, and other states are going to have to rely on their own. How much of a concern is it on Capitol Hill to try to help states balance budgets? Because right now, the revenue's not coming in and the expenditures are still going out.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the governors were asking for $500 billion. And you might remember in the package that the House did pass, Speaker Pelosi's package, she didn't do $500 billion, she did $2 trillion as part of the $3 trillion package. She was able to pass it. She had the votes. But at the end of the day, of course, that was viewed as dead on arrival. However, now we are looking at the state's revenue adjustments, that type of thing. There's a bipartisan proposal that's being shopped around. We had a Zoom call last week with Larry Hogan, Republican governor of Maryland. We're looking at helping states and local communities with COVID expenses and loss of revenue. And this would be in the neighborhood of $500 billion, what the states were looking for. It would be based not on politics, but real numbers, number of cases, population, exact loss of revenue, as sales tax and everything else that has pretty much evaporated for a lot of different states. And we're looking at that. It's a bipartisan proposal that's beginning to move forward. Probably now starts in the Senate, since the House did pass a package. It's going nowhere, so we'll see the Senate sort of rebound with this. They'll look at a much smaller package, but again, this is something that the Problem Solvers Caucus is taking a very good, hard look at, and we may see a vote of our group perhaps within the next week or so in terms of where we are. Lots of discussions that are ongoing.
Yeah, let's put it this way. We're having to deal with the situation right now with COVID-19, and yet we also have to deal with the ramifications beyond once we get to the other side of this situation, and that definitely is a big concern. Go ahead, Fred.
Note as well that the proposal that we're looking at has a provision that does not allow the money to go for past, I'll call them sins. Pension plans that have been out of whack. Maybe we use the state of Illinois as an example. It's been underfunded for a lot of years. This is not going to be a bailout for any state pension fund from the past. That's a specific prohibition that we have that's actually in the legislation that we're taking a look at.
One final thing, Fred, and it's something that your colleague Bill Heising of Zeeland addressed with us a little bit last Thursday. I wanted to see whether or not you've been getting some of the same concerns as well. Some of the money that was designated for cities, municipalities under the CARES Act, going to the big cities, 500,000 or more communities and such of that. But the smaller communities aren't getting anything. And keep in mind, under the CARES Act, that money doesn't necessarily have to go to the smaller communities. It goes to the states. Bill was saying, put some pressure on the Whitmer administration to release the money to the smaller communities. But under this CARES Act, it's not necessarily true. Have you been getting some comments, maybe from some of the communities in your district, about, hey, where's our money from CARES Act coming and why aren't we getting anything?
Yeah, well, Bill's right on. And I've been hearing the same comments as well from a lot of my communities too. again, going back to this proposal that we're taking a look at, we want to make sure that all communities with COVID are impacted in a positive way. They're going to get funding, and there's going to be no penalty for, let's say it goes to the city of Holland, and all of a sudden the governor says, no, we're going to cut your funds because those are additional funds that you got. We're making sure that there's not a rebound in terms of a clawback of those funds as well. But yeah, we're looking at every community treated the same. You might remember the old revenue sharing program under President Reagan, and it was a formula. There was no politics involved. Every community got it on the same equitable basis, and that's what we want to see happen here. Obviously, if you're a larger city, you're going to get more money, but that doesn't mean you're going to deny money to a city the size of Holland or St. Joe, Portage, that type of thing, just because they're not $500,000. That's not right.
Yeah, we'll see if those developments do go through. As always, Fred, we appreciate you joining us, not only this today, but also on a Tuesday morning. Please have a safe trip to Washington and back. And if all goes well, let's do this again next Tuesday morning. Fred, thank you for joining us today.
You bet.
And that is Fred Upton, the Congressman from St. Joseph, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.